I love Slay the Spire 2. Love might be an understatement though, given I have over 270 hours of playtime recorded on Steam, and I've submitted quite a few speedruns of the game. I've attempted thousands and thousands of runs, though many of those were a few seconds at most, and I consider myself to be fairly knowledgeable about the game, especially one character in particular that many of you know is by far my favorite. Anyways, one of my favorite parts about this game is the major dopamine hit when a massive attack is played on the enemy and a huge damage number pops up. That damage comes from many things, mainly deck optimization and the occasional gigantification potion, but it also comes from an immense desire to obliterate anyone who stands in my way as I march towards my goal. But what if that desire to deal huge amounts of damage disappeared? What if I didn't want to attack at all? Does the game support my passive playstyle? What about an Ascension 10, where mistakes often lead to a reset, even the most minor mistakes? In other words, is it possible to beat Slay the Spire 2's hardest difficulty without attacking once? I decided to try and answer that question, and my plan is to look at every character individually, since not all characters are created equal in this matter. I'll be going through each character, one at a time, explaining their basic strengths and weaknesses, completing the challenge on Ascension 0, and outlining the setup required in order to conquer Ascension 10. I will also be attempting the challenge in Ascension 10, however, you will come to realize, as I did, how insanely difficult that task actually is. Additionally, I'll be including an attempt counter for each character on Ascension 0 and Ascension 10, showing how many resets I had. Since I will be doing this challenge from easiest to hardest, this first video will be looking at the Necrobinder. Now, here's some ground rules for the challenge. Number 1. I cannot play any cards that are categorized as an attack, which is actually shown on the card itself. Number 2. I cannot use other cards as a method of playing attacks, and if that occurs, I will immediately reset. An example would be discarding a Sly attack on Silent or using Catastrophe to play attacks out of my draw pile. Number 3. I am allowed to use potions, even if they deal damage. However, I cannot use any attacks that come from said potions. The example would be an attack potion. Number 4. I will be playing on Beta Branch, however I cannot utilize any bugs or cheats that improve my chances of winning. An example would be quitting and continuing to restart a fight. Number 5. This one's obvious, but I must do this in single player mode, and I'm doing it with all unlocks, meaning I'll have access to all cards, relics, ancients, etc. Number 6, I'm only allowed 3 maximum cards from other characters each run, so that I stay to the general playstyle of the character being played. If I happen to break any of these rules at any time, I must reset the run immediately. Now that the rules have been established, let's take a look at our first challenger, the Necrobinder. The reason I chose Necrobinder as the easiest character for this challenge is due to her ability to apply Doom to the enemy. Now, Doom is a debuff that does not wear off, and is typically applied in stacks over the course of the combat. Once the quantity of Doom on an enemy is greater than their life total, they will die at the end of their next turn. For those of you who are not familiar with Slay the Spire 2, you might be wondering who this little hand dude is. Well, his name is Asti, and he's actually what makes Necro so versatile. Now, what makes Asti so useful in this run is the fact that he can tank damage prior to the Necrobinder. There are many different cards that can be used, which will increase Asti's maximum health and act as block that won't be removed at the start of each turn. It's very similar to Barricade on Ironclad. An additional cool feature about Asti is that he has his own attack cards. Unfortunately, those attack cards are still categorized as attacks, so they're off the table for this challenge. Now that I've explained the challenge in general, as well as the rules, let's take a look at what strategy I'll be using, as well as any cards or relics that I'll be looking for during the course of the run. There are 10 cards that can be used to apply Doom to the enemy, these being Blight Strike, Misery, Reaper Form, Countdown, Deathbringer, Negative Pulse, No Escape, End of Days, Oblivion, and Scourge. Of these 10 cards, there are 3 that cannot be used for this challenge due to them being attacks or something related to attacks. So Blight Strike, Misery, and Reaper Form are off the table. The other 7, however, are all free game. These 7 cards are going to be our main method of killing the enemy. Survivability isn't too difficult on Necrobinder, but it's important to be aware of what cards we can utilize to keep ourselves alive during this run. Cards like Defy, Death's Door, Delay, Grave Warden, Shroud, Undeath, Dirge, Pull Aggro, Reanimate, Spur, Enfeebling Touch, Putrefy, and Shared Fate are all great options for this challenge and are going to be extremely beneficial to us as we try to finish the run. Card draw and energy generation is also important, and Necrobinder has quite a few options for that as well. Cards like Wisp, Page Storm, Parse, Neurosurge, Invoke, Friendship, Dredge, Dirge again, Capture Spirit, and Borrowed Time are all great cards for this challenge and are going to help us gain a lot of card draw and energy over the course of it. There are also some cards that I'll be relying on to deal damage other than Doom and attack cards, those being Haunt, Necromastery, and Sleight of Flesh. Sleight of Flesh is especially powerful because debuffs like Negative Strength, Weaken, and Doom are all able to trigger it and deal damage to the enemy. Two other cards that will be helpful for kind of filtering out my deck during fights are Cleanse and Seance, but those are kind of more of a case-by-case basis, and frankly, I'm not relying on them as much as some of the other cards. Two other cards that kind of fall into that mix as well are Call of the Void and Transfigure, and although they're good cards in some cases, it's kind of dependent on the run, and I'm not going to be relying on them as much. It's also important to remember that I can use colorless cards for this challenge. What's nice about colorless cards is they have extreme versatility, and regardless of the state of the run, if I happen to get a colorless card, it'll be very beneficial. There are a few relics in this challenge and Necrobinder in general that kind of stand above the rest as far as how beneficial they are. Any relics that help give more block, deal damage to the enemy, as well as any exceptions like Juzu Bracelet and Unsettling Lamp, and a few others. When looking at Niao's relics, or the starting relics that you get at the beginning of every run, there are a few that you can and cannot use for this challenge. In order to get past this first obstacle, you need a card that's able to apply doom or damage to the enemy that isn't an attack. The Niao relics that aren't able to provide that are the following: Booming Conch, Cursed Pearl, Golden Pearl, Large Capsule, Niao's Talisman and Niao's Torment, Nutritious Oyster, Pomander, Fishing Rod, Lava Rock, File Holster, Precarious Shears, Winged Boots, Silver Crucible, Precise Scissors, Silken Tress, and Stone Humidifier and Small Capsule. If I were to only get these options at the beginning of the run, I would be forced to reset because none of these are able to provide enough damage or doom to an enemy to get past the first combat. But what are the relics that are able to get us past that first combat, or at least give us the ability to if we get lucky enough? Those relics are Hefty Tablet, Arcane Scroll, Lost Coffer Kaleidoscope, Leafy Poultice Lead Paperweight, Niao's Bones New Leaf, and finally Scroll Boxes. If we're lucky enough to get one of these, as well as a card that's able to apply doom or damage to the enemy and get us past the first combat, we'll be able to get a new card reward, which can give us exponential growth in our damage or doom abilities. But what about the Ancients in Act 2 and 3? What do we need from them to be able to push us further in the run? Technically, none of these are mandatory, except for one, which I'll get to later, but they are extremely beneficial if we get lucky enough. First, let's start with Tezcatar in Act 2. I'm looking for one of 4 relics, either Pumpkin Candle, Seal of Gold, Storybook, or Very Hot Cocoa. All of these relics are able to provide energy generation of some sort, and can be very powerful if I can manage to get card draw early on in the combats. Looking next at Pale, I'd prefer one of these 5 relics, either Pale's Blood, Pale's Growth, Pale's Wing, Pale's Tears, or Pale's Flesh. These relics have a lot more variation than Tez, but they all have their own special capabilities if they're played correctly. Next is Ouroboros. Ouroboros has the highest potential success rate of the Act 2 Ancients because they're able to provide one of 7 relics that I'd prefer. Electric Shrimp, Prismatic Gem, Driftwood, Alchemical Coffer, Radiant Pearl, Sandcastle, or Sea Glass. Any of these would be beneficial to the run, but one of them stands out in particular. Early on when I was strategizing for this run, I realized combining Electric Shrimp with End of Days, which applies 37 Doom when upgraded, and immediately kills any enemy that has Doom greater than their life total, is extremely powerful because it's ripped at the start of the combat, and any enemy that has less than 37 health immediately dies. Let's quickly take a look at Darv, who is an ancient that you can get in this challenge, since I have all unlocks, but frankly doesn't provide a lot of benefits. So long as I get one of these 4 relics, I'll be alright. Astrolabe, Empty Cage, Runic Pyramid, or Sozu. Although Darv isn't the most broken ancient for this challenge, he is technically viable if we get lucky. Looking now towards Act 3, let's take a look at first Vaku, by far the worst ancient to get in this challenge. There are only 3 relics that I'd be willing to take from Vaku, and frankly, all of them are terrible. Jeweled Mask, Choice's Paradox, or Preserved Fog. Even if I can get those, I wouldn't be happy, and frankly, I'd probably reset immediately if I got Vaku in general. Tanks, however, is a very different story. There's one of 4 relics that I'd be willing to take from Tanks. Either Iron Club, Meat Cleaver, Sai, or Throwing Axe. All of these have a lot more potential than Vaku's relics, that's for sure, and have the ability to provide a lot of benefits towards the end of the run. But now let's look at the most broken ancient for this challenge, and eventually I realized I would need to get this in Act 3, otherwise the run would be dead in Ascension 10. Non-Upiape, or Non-Upipi, I don't know. Anyways, Non-Upi something is very broken for this challenge, and by far has the best relics available. Beautiful Bracelet, Brilliant Scarf, Fur Coat, Looming Fruit, Signet Ring, Delicate Frond, Glitter, Jewelry Box, all of these are really good options. And at first I was kind of going towards Fur Coat, at least when I was initially strategizing, just because being able to kind of skip 7 combats if you get lucky enough can be very helpful in staying healthy towards the end of the run. There is one relic, however, that Nanu offers that is significantly better than the rest for this challenge, and basically became the win condition for these runs, and that's Diamond Diadem. I didn't realize how broken this relic was until Mira, another speedrunner that I'm sure many of you know, pointed it out to me. It's pretty self-explanatory, but taking half damage when you play 2 or fewer cards every single turn is just insanely broken, and that's going to be more obvious later when I show you some of the runs that I had. But that's the basic strategy for this run. Get as many Doom cards as you can early, try to survive as long as you can, and get to Act 3, hoping and praying that you get some insane relic to carry you through the Act 3 bosses. Now, before I decided to do Ascension 10, I wanted to see how effective the strategy was on Ascension 0, and it didn't take long for me to realize that it isn't very hard, and it actually only took 1 reset before I was able to do this. So with Ascension 0 out of the way, and frankly it was very easy, I was looking forward to Ascension 10. I was thinking to myself, you know what? Ascension 0 was very easy. I kind of just flew through it. Surely Ascension 10 wouldn't be that bad. It didn't take long, however, for me to realize exactly what I had gotten myself into, and I very quickly began to regret my decisions. So yeah, I was pretty frustrated. I had spent tons and tons of hours with basically nothing to show for it. My only major achievement during the entire thing was making it to the final boss once. And I didn't even get past the first boss, so I knew that I was in big trouble. I didn't know what I needed to change, I didn't know what to do, so I decided to ask for some help. This is where I started talking to Mira. We went back and forth a bit, talking about strategy, but eventually Mira decided to suggest me something that I hadn't even considered prior to the conversation: a seed searcher. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are saying to yourselves, oh, come on, that's just cheating. Like, you can't use a seed searcher or anything like that. But let me just explain myself first. First of all, my original intention with this video was not to go from random seed to random seed to random seed and just try random things until it worked. Since I didn't think there was a seed searcher available when I started this challenge, my plan was to try random seeds until I found one that was good enough to make a push, and then set that seed over and over again, trying different things, hoping that one of them would work. Unfortunately, over the course of my many attempts, I didn't really find a seed that fit that criteria at all. The seed searcher will give me access to more optimal seeds, but it won't give me a guaranteed win, and it'll still be up to me to try over and over again until I eventually make it work. The second reason I don't consider it to really be cheating is the fact that I'm very limited in the options that I can choose for the seed searcher. I can really only choose what I want for my Niao relic, who I want as my 2 ancients in Act 2 and 3, what relics I'd like from each of those, as well as what relic I'd like in the first shop. However, I didn't really use it that much because having all filters selected made the searching time much longer, and frankly, the shop relic didn't play much of a difference in the run success anyway. After messing around with it a bit, I finally managed to get it working, and I realized that this was going to be a much more effective way of winning the run. These were some of the highlights from those seeded runs, as well as an example of how long it would take to find a seed if I used all of the filters. So yeah, much more efficient. I actually managed to beat the first boss, and frankly, I was feeling pretty good. I knew that it was going to take a little bit still, but I was making a lot of progress, and I was excited for that. It was around this time that Mira also said that they wanted to get involved in the runs and try some out themselves. I'm not even joking when I tell you that Mira took less than a day to win a run. Unfortunately, they weren't recording, and it was also on main branch, so it wouldn't count for beating the challenge anyway. But it did prove to me that this was possible. I also think it was around this time that Mira pointed out how insanely broken Diamond Diadem is, and that combined with Mira's insane luck and skill in seed finding and my numerous attempts, we were going to be able to beat this challenge. It was later that same day that Mira sent another seed, and this time things were a bit different. Although Mira wasn't able to beat it themselves, they thought that it was realistic, and they thought that it could be optimized more heavily. And I decided to try it out. And this is what happened. If you'd like to see a full recording of the run, I'll leave it linked in the description below. But yeah, after all that, I managed to finish it. And frankly, I couldn't believe it. I had spent hours and hours looking for a seed that would win the run, and all it took was one other person and less than a day to find one for me. There are a few things to note about the run. First of all, I don't typically take Necromastery. I only took it because I was thinking maybe it would just be an extra form of damage. That was it. Not sure what my thought process was other than that, but it ended up working out big time, and it was extremely beneficial. You also may have noticed that I didn't get End of Days as my starting card, even though that's typically what I go for at the start of my runs, but it ended up working out anyway, so I guess I can't really complain. Lastly, you may have noticed that I bought a fairy in a bottle towards the end of the run, and that was just because I wanted to play it safe. I just think it's funny that I didn't end up needing it in the slightest. But yeah, that's about it, so I just wanted to thank you all for watching if you made it this far. And if you feel like this is the type of content that you'd like to see more of, feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be coming out with more videos like this, and your support would be greatly appreciated. I'd also greatly appreciate any comments that you have about the editing or the style of the video, since I don't typically do long-form videos, and this is my first time really editing any video longer than 10 minutes. So any advice or suggestions would be super helpful. Also, I just want to give a huge shout out to Mira for helping me out in this video. I legitimately don't know how long it would have taken to finish without their help. Lastly, thank you to Riptide Lab for inspiring me to make this video. I'll leave a link to that video down in the description below. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.